Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode. This episode is going to be a short one, and I would like to speak about notions of selfhood and provide a commentary on what I call the inner realm. Okay, I think this is a better song. Alright. So, there was an observation I made today. I noticed that the idea we have on ourselves is an activity that at times simultaneously happens when we actually move as ourselves. So it's as if, like, I noticed before I move my body, my mind is the mover, is moving. But when I move my body, my mind and my body are moving simultaneously, as if when we stop our body, our mind's movement we become aware of. And when we physically move with the body, it's as if we're aware of the body's movement simultaneous with the mind's movement. Now, this notion that your potential, the idea of you, can prevent the potential of you, or is this even possible? First of all, I have two different kinds of answers to my own title, so I can see a response from both angles. And the cool thing about this world is that the more you stick around in it, the more you use what you see to explain it. So, trying to find. Okay, hopefully this song works. So, the idea of you, where was I? The potential of you. The idea of you, the potential of you, it's like, what's the difference? Yeah. Okay, to continue. The idea of you. Oh my god. Sorry guys, I can't believe this song, my own song choices. Let's go on the shore. Or actually, this one, right? Okay, so when we physically move, we can't maybe tell apart this, but when my body, any moment any human person stops, just stop moving, even right now listening to me, you're gonna notice more attention to your own mind, to your mind's activity. And the cool thing about the mind's activity is that we can't pinpoint it in space and time. Why? Because the mind is creating these concepts. The mind is active, as if it's what we see that is the world is not just the world, it's the world plus how we are happening. Now, I have had moments in my life where the question, could the idea of you prevent the potential of you, totally. And what I have noticed is that it's not just the idea of me, it's the idea of what I want from the moment. That means some moments you want the wrong thing. It's as if the karma of the moment scolds you. And you know, there is this strange thing in life where it would happen to me when I was younger, but I don't know, ever since speaking about it, it's become different. But it's like that moment when someone wants something too much, and they're right on the verge of getting it, not getting it, and they don't get it. Okay, and I'm not trying to create some sort of meaning in this, but just the notion that when you want something too much, you are actually going closer and closer to a state when you desire something, let's say out of your reach obsessively. You don't, the desire mutates you. That's exactly it. The desire mutates the person, and then the karma of the moment changes. And it's hilarious because somebody who wants something super intensely, or let me say it in a different way, somebody who wants something without the willingness to go at the pace of the journey, it's as if a person, I don't know how to say it, it's like too much desire. It's like the person has convinced themselves they can't have it, so that's why they're desiring it so much, you know. I remember seeing this hilarious interview, and I don't know why, I was just surfing on YouTube and it was one of the videos that came up, and it was the actor from Gladiator, the king though, Phoenix, Joaquin Phoenix, I believe. And he was on this interview show, and he's just there kind of like being himself, and then the interviewer asks him, hey, can you sing? And the interviewer is trying to get him to sing like this. And there's something where Joaquin Phoenix says no to him, says I'm not gonna sing, but then he tells the guy in a French show, like last week he sang, right? And he tells the person, you're wanting it too much. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's like that's the thing. It's as if our desires can dehumanize us out of a sort of decency sensitivity, and when it's out of that decency sensitivity, it's all off tune. So the idea of you, and also the idea of you, is based on your intent and how your energy opens up to the world. I mean, when I say your intent, I mean ultimately we're just attention. In my school of thought, personally, I see every living human being as attention, just moving around. And imagine if we were looking at a matrix screen, we would just see language, like people's self-storytelling, which we in quotations call thinking, right? That is the code. Literally, when I see human beings, I mean, of course, there is a level where it's not like they ask this neurologist. It's like when you look at your child, do you see only neurons? And the neurologist is like, no. You know? Can you imagine? So there is something, and I've been, from the beginning of my life, I would say I've noticed this. In one talk, I called it the sincerity resonance, and also the discrimination of what is authorized to say. There's been moments, I'll tell you, where I said something, and just in a talk, in one of these talks I was giving, there was a lot of desire. There was something, I felt like I had figured out something way, way more than a sort of inner contentment. And the whole talk was missed. Even it was like, I think it was, when was this? This was in 2014. I think it was the seventh talk I gave, or it could have been the second. But there was one talk I remember I was trying to somehow, explain in the shaman's eyes, in the through the context of how Moses had opened the Red Sea. Something I don't remember what it was, but it was like something in those lines. And the file was corrupt, so it's also an energetic thing. You know, they say when the student is ready, the master appears. What if the student is ready, the master appears? Suddenly the student is not ready anymore. The master disappears. It's like, sorry. You know, so this thing about desire is important, and especially for human civility. If the desire is based on inner realm, it's still animalistic. That means, imagine like two robots, okay? One is programmed. I mean, here's the thing, I'll give you a better. They did this test on like lab rats, okay? And these lab rats, they put one that was with more of an alpha position, one that was physically more dominant-willed. And then there was one who was, one of the rats was smaller, and beta, just concerned with the maintenance of itself. not the maintenance of the bigger picture. So anyways, this rat, excuse me, this rat, what is this rat? Oh yeah, the two rats, they're put into this box, they play a game, and the bigger rat realizes that if it keeps winning, the smaller rat doesn't want to play. Right? So the bigger rat keeps winning, but lets the smaller rat, the beta rat also win. Right? There's something like that, because then the smaller rat doesn't want to play the game if the alphas keep winning. If it keeps winning, that means it like goes beyond nature's simple progression. You know, I think there was this scene in one of the old Indiana Jones movies where they're in the middle of this cave, and there's like this square platform, and it's like this booby trap, and the way each person in that scene is like balanced on the plane keeps it there. So if people realize actually they require each other's balance for progression, you know, we don't realize what we lose from teamwork, from the absence of teamwork. But if the future generations, if a time traveler from the future could come, and let's say this time traveler, what would this time traveler do? This time traveler shows us every time a person doesn't denies teamwork or denies the balance of the moment. That means it's like sometimes if you're more important than the moment, you care about only your happiness. If the moment is more important than you, you care about the moment's outcome. I can tell decency is important, but decency changes if we define it, right? And our eyes change. That's the biggest thing. That means so many events happen. Like if I was to say what the day is, it's like eyes open variables, known variables, things that the intelligence can familiarize, and the unknown variables, things the intelligence can't familiarize. Now those things that the intelligence can't familiarize, it can endlessly use what it is familiar with to explain. But it could have limits. That means it's like naming something that has never existed. Imagine tomorrow we discover something and we need to name that, right? Naming is a method to make the moment true to the individual. This is very important, I would say. The more the idea of you, let's say it's in 3 states, solid, liquid, gas. The more the idea of yourself, you want it to be solid in the moment. I feel that the moment goes faster, so the person falls out in the karma. It's as if like, I don't know, what is it? The insincere, what was that? I remember saying in one talk, the playful die first, and they don't die first in battle, they leave the realm though. That means all those beings whose natures are playful, if there was a disaster taking place, they would exit. You know? If the person has a gas, like let's say you went from liquid to gas, that means first your sense of self was 100% no, yeah, I am this, doing this, you know? And then it becomes like I am semi this, doing semi this, okay? Then it becomes I am not this and I am not doing this. And a person will never know their potential until they actually do something, right? That's one thing I would say. That means, like, let's say a person drinks a cup of tea and they have no thought. That means it's just a moment, it's just an action, not a concept per se. That means there needs to be no ideological sub-movement. That means, why is it that if we want to move a cup from a table to another part of the table, we can do that instantly, but if we want to move different parts, like different things, let's say, or the person wants to some things in life the person plans so much for, like what is the suggestion of instantaneous ability and then ability through time, through a journey in time. Now check this out. What's interesting is, based on how people live, they are creating memories. That means if a person is gentle in this life, their future self has more gentle memories to work with. If the person is violent, they're creating more violent memories for their future self. Now you want to take it in a mystical sense. Let's say the last you thought you have on this idea, on this earth, is going to be the last conscious memory, right? Because I always thought about it. There was this story in the Puranas. And guys, I know this talk is all over the place, but there's something I'm digging for. There's in the Puranas, there was a yogi. This yogi saves a deer's life from a tiger. This baby deer's life, like this deer is running in the middle of a river. The deer is pregnant. The tiger is chasing it. The tiger can't cross the river. The deer gives birth, and the yogi takes the deer. Takes care of the deer and starts raising this deer, this life form. And at the end of the yogi's life, the yogi was constantly trying to be in meditation, samadhi, be in the ultimate state. And what happens is that right before he's about to exit this realm, his attention is about to exit this realm, he's in samadhi. That means he is supremely selfless. And then for a moment, he's like, where did the deer go? And the moment he has this thought, where did the deer go? He incarnates as a deer his next lifetime in the Puranas, and it said it that way. He incarnates as a deer and he remembers all his memories from all his lifetimes, but he's in the body of a deer. Now, I thought about, why is it that the last thought, and I guess another explanation could be that it's the last conscious memory before an entrance into a void impact. That means imagine you teleported into a world that was completely different. How shocking that was. Now imagine teleporting to a state where there is no world. That means we've been training for, what is it, however amount of years the human being lives, right? And it's a conditioning, and the conditioning we don't know, but the conditioning is transcendental. It echoes beyond this dimension how you live. So the last conscious memory suggests the liftoff. Now, what are the options? A human being has to constantly keep their mind in check, trying to renounce the outer realms, or they could approach it from an angle where they don't have the possibility of defeat. That means there's some beings so convinced that they're temporary that their whole life has become eternal. Follow this attitude, this behavior, this ideology. Yeah, you're gonna get to eternity one day. And it's much simpler. Truth is simpler than language. Because if I consider myself as the space, right now I find myself in a moment and I'm identifying with what's in this space, my body in this space. But if I identify for a moment as the space of my mind, the space can't die. Can awareness die? Awareness is not even an object to break, do you know? That means when the candle melts, all the light in the room goes out. So if this is our world, let us for an angle not see ourselves as temporary beings in a seeking eternity, but as eternal beings seeking the temporary. So right now you are like an infinite being finite, doing things that are finite, identifying with finite motion. Now if you were an eternal being, this living and life would not be a burden, a trap, an illusion, a prison, an enforced school. Like all these metaphors go away, and then it becomes just pure, I would say, creativity. The cultural program cages the deeper dimensions of the human being. So as long as the person chooses to be as character in a story that is not arising from their own eyes, they will be a slave to language that did not come, that did not journey through them. This is why when life becomes a notebook, your own voice becomes fascinating for you. And you know what it is? It's as if we have zoomed in on matter, but we have not attempted to zoom in on space because we considered there's nothing there. As long as space is defined as the absence of matter, there's a curtain. There's a curtain over the world. What if space is being matter? How would we find a way to even prove this? That means if there was intelligence that was not limited to the body, if all our knowledge and explanations and measurements are based on embodied, an embodied angle, how can we tell? We have created a knowledge that actually has no way of seeing beyond itself. We have created a box. Civilization 1.0 is the, honestly, it's not a good civilization, but it's the most beautiful box you'll ever find. This doesn't mean there has to be a constant jump from chaos and order, and for the first time human beings on this planet will be like, oh my god, maybe I am both. Maybe we need a mind to be a body, and we need a body to know that we're a mind. Because if there was no body, how would you know you're a mind? You'd just be eyes of space. Can you imagine there's endless minds, there's a mind field, okay? And it's like these mind fields are just bored. That means, imagine anytime a species emerges, it gets filled up as if like a vacuum gets filled. And imagine the conscious experience is a vacuum. It's like space is being poured into matter as matter moves. And we've zoomed in on matter, and what's hilarious is we found 99.9% of the atom is empty. That means that we've zoomed in on matter and we're like, oh no, emptiness. And we've zoomed out and we're like, oh no, emptiness. And we look at our back into our beginning of history, oh no, emptiness. You know, and the future, oh my god, emptiness. It seems that life is only full where we are present. And what is life is actually the conscious experience of unconscious existential presence. And look at the body. I mean, look at the body. Based on what you eat, it becomes. The body becomes what you input in it. Right? And we've thought about the body, like the traditional idea of the body, mind, soul. But what if the body is becoming mind? Like, you know, and the mind is becoming soul. And what this suggests is that something is starting as a known object, that's the body, then becoming a semi-known and semi-unknown subject, and then a purely unknown witness. So that means there's a dimension of you that surpasses objects and subjects. There's a dimension of you that is only subjects, and there's a subjects and objects, and then there's a dimension of you where it is just an object, and that is, you can say, free will dismissal. You free willingly dismissed your free will. It's like will was freed, but then thought free will was an illusion, so who was free? It's subtle, it's like a balance. It's like human civilization is just 8 billion creatures trying to stand on a surfboard. And imagine right now human beings could teleport anywhere in space. How many human beings would remain on Earth? Let's say right now we found like planets with different species, humanoid, and we had diplomatic relationships with them. Human beings went and lived there, they came and lived here. It was like, you know, diplomatic, you know, intergalactic relationships, you know. And imagine we had the capacity to leave Earth. That means right now, if you had a choice to leave Earth, I am telling you, the spiritual and the secular, most people would leave Earth. Very few people care to stay here, you know? And the idea of incarnation before you were born, it was not something, let me tell you, there's something about language that if you don't see yourself as the pilot, the language becomes you. Then it's up to the discretion of the speaker. That means if you find someone who's speaking who's cruel, you know, they will take from what they say has a sort of taking energy, you know. But if you preserve, it's as if a lot of spiritual people, all those spiritual people who want to leave Earth, whether intergalactic explanation, and if right now you could leave Earth, would you do it or not, right? That would suggest the real human beings. The real human beings are the ones who care for the human experience's continuity. That means what is so sad about this world is that a human being being super violent is like not human. It's dehumanized behavior, so technically there is no humanity. Even somebody can be exposed to savageness and cruelty to a point where they become dehumanized, you know. And a lot of people's, I would say, guilt, I shouldn't say guilt, but where conscience comes in is trying to preserve you to how you feel what being human is. That means conscience is your humanization backup system. So, a human being acting violently is not a human being. A human being trying to transcend humanism completely, that means that there's certain metaphysical schools of thought that they're like, okay, that it's like we still care for the physical, you know. It's like, sure, the world can be a dream, but still the dream has content. I mean, we can't ignore it. There's endless people waking up in this dream, right? It's not easy to leave the boat, you know. Like, I could totally understand that scene in Titanic where the captain went down with the ship. Why? Because that ship was his life. And so when a person thinks they're suffering and wants to dehumanize, or thinks dehumanization is the only solution, that is not. Like, this was why Buddha was so special compared to many, you could say, meditative schools before him. That means when Buddha came, there was Brahmanism, this sort of ritualism going on. That means that people thought that being truth is doing something that's like just a new authorization. What that means is it was pretty much a time where, imagine if enlightenment was a passcode on a wall, right? Like a futuristic passcode, you gotta just click some numbers in. Ritualism, when before Buddha's time, was like random people without any idea, just people pressing random numbers in the passcode. And then Buddha, when he came, and Buddha of course means awakened one, Gautama Siddhartha, when he came, he noticed that everybody's trying to press the passcode, trying to find the right password to truth. He realized you are outside of the door. You're looking at the passcode of a room you're not in. So Buddha in some sense realized that the door doesn't need a passcode, that the passcode, the stories of suffering, they are mind stuff. And mind stuff is arbitrary. Can you imagine if you could imagine something and it would be real instantly? It's like, I wish, you know, that would be like nanotechnology. That would be a technology as powerful and equivalent as nanotechnology, like stories of Sai Baba in India manifesting goats out of thin air, or like, you know,
You know, or like the dude brought a cow out of nowhere and manifested a cow out of another dimension here, right? And people are like, okay, the miracles are getting. Can you imagine if Sai Baba manifested a planet inside the planet? That would be like proof that there would be no more planets. You know, destruction. But the idea of pulling things out of other dimensions into this dimension, how different dimensions don't have content, and if a person can visualize a cake, but doesn't mean the cake appears in front of them, and if the design of the cake visually is accessible. So it's, as much as I can say, like all that I've said about the mind, all moments inevitably move on. Being human is important. Metaphysics that dismisses the physics. That means if we just see ourselves as 100% matter, it's not human. If we see ourselves 100% as immaterial, it's not human. So it's a balance. Balance of humanism. First of all, how many people are listening to this? 7 people again. So, Ruth, I read your comment. I'm not going to read it out loud, but let me tell you. Forgive the world that doesn't know better, and don't think anybody is right and wrong in a multidimensional realm. Because we can see the future inevitably becoming beyond human. I'm not avoiding that idea. I'm just saying now in 2020, extreme materialism, extreme immaterialism dismisses the human role. Because it dismisses the human role, the cultural entity, then our cultures don't update. So knowledge that is dehumanized in some sense can't be accessible. And what is human is communication. I can't tell you how this word was so, like, I didn't care for the word. Like, I didn't even fathom, like, okay, communication, it was so second nature. I never thought about the word communication. But when you think about its role in the realm, and how we are human is based on how we move and make sound. Our communication is what keeps us human. If right now I just stayed here like a statue, I would not be human, right? If the whole moment paused, it would not be human, right? It is our motion that is human, right? So it could be that in the future, our species attains the maturity that instead of thinking we are human beings, like based on like the future could totally look at what I'm saying and be like, okay, in the future we're going to get bored of being a human being. How long are we going to be a human being, like reproducing all over the universe? After some point we may really discover our true face as intelligence and recognize that what we called the human life was actually a phase in the universal event of things. Because we take for granted how we have popped out of nowhere, how we have emerged from the void. As far as I'm concerned, one of the best arguments, not against but for eternity, how eternal intelligence is in the room before a temporary one, is in the sense not an eternal but an unknown from another dimension. Let me tell you why. Because it's like a creature from the ocean, from the depths of the ocean, coming to the surface of the ocean, then stepping out of the ocean, right? And it could be even healthy that we treat that there's two worlds. We think it's one world and people are fighting over its one truth. But let's say there's two worlds. There's a world where nobody's opinions really matter. That world is the world of objects purely. That means I'm looking at this like cup in front of me, and it's an object. I could call it a cup, I could use a different language, call it a limon, I could call it different things, but ultimately the object doesn't care what I call it. That means that's the cool thing. You can drop your phone and your phone doesn't start insulting you and cursing you. Oh my god, you clumsy, biological nonsense. Can you imagine if phones could talk back? You mistreated your phone and the phone was like, how dare you drop me, I'll never be your phone again, and they're like, no phone, please, So objects don't care about really subjects, but the subject cares how it's being an object and how objects are being objects to it. So emotions are not for atoms. Atoms don't have feelings. Electrons can't feel, Complicated positioning and emergence of cells can, through the projection of psychology, artificially create the illusion that it's feeling something detached from the universe. But atoms don't have feelings. That means an atom can break, and you don't see all the atoms in the universe cry like this atom, or like let's say, let's say an atomic reaction is kind of like those atoms, all the atoms in atom history. Imagine if all the atoms had personalities, and they, in some sense, when the nuclear bomb happened, that went into history as like the worst, event in atom history. Oh man, I'm of course being silly here, guys. I'm gonna seriously get back to this again. So, objects don't care about our feelings. Subjects create feelings in regards to how they create themselves, the world, and their relationship with it. See, guys, children, the human mind, any human being that has played with toys, if you've played with something as a child, what you have done there, what has taken place from a psychological view, is that you as a human being made the toy your best friend. You imbued an object with your will's animation, with your will's animate potential. Okay, so Sveta, in the chat section, when you say Carl Jung was talking to his kettle and kitchen utensil, he wasn't talking. He was wise enough to know the edge of his mind, and then he created that word so all of us know. I think, see, there's a point where the balance of the inner realms and outer realms, they're kept. That means, let's say somebody is speaking, and let's say it's like as your biological state changes, your discretion of discrimination between the inner realms and outer realms, it becomes the challenge, right? So it's as if you see old people kind of, saying things from their youth. It's as if you could totally see programs and applications in their youth, events in their youth are like anime, right? Like I have an 80, I've an incredible human being. My grandfather on my mother's side, he's 80 years old, and he had some success in the business realm. Back in his time, he was an apprentice of like this shop, and then he came and he grew from there. And every time, like, me and my brother go see him, sometimes, and he every time just repeats the same event. It was as if when a person gets old, the moments of their life that they were really alive, they are more vivid, right? And so it's like it narrows down. That means there's something strange about old age, that you can see like the dimensions of the person. And this is, of course, he's 80, like, and not for some people, maybe they're 80 and there's nothing wrong with that, but the way he's taking care of himself and who he is, like, and with his health conditions and his the karma of his DNA, I can tell you that I feel I saw a universal truth in that moment from my grandfather. I saw that the brain animates its victories. Why? Because that's the game it's playing in the void. And this means a completely new era in understanding psychology, where it becomes tunneling. That means it's not the person's going from A to B to C to D. From A is tunneling into B. And then A and B are tunneling into C. And then ABC is tunneling into D. Right? And it's a journey with a trail of memories being left behind, as based on how consciously you live and how unconsciously you live. Those people who, let's say you're right now someone, you're someone, and this could be many people who have this mindset. You right now are convinced that non-duality is enlightenment. And you're trying to, let's say you're remaining as unknown selfless witness completely, to a point where your behavior in the outer realms is non-dualistic. You see, this is where, do you want to have karma, or do you want to have no karma? That means if you are selfless, non-dualistic in your inner realms, and in your outer realms you're doing something, because there isn't a sense of self, there is no karma. There can't be. There's no causal cause to become an effect in that moment. So, if you're selfless, you technically also don't create memories. And I'll be honest, in all that I have spoken throughout the years, I select what I choose to accompany me to the next day. And it's not that everything is a choice. There's been times where I've had an idea and I've seen it from a certain angle, then another dimension of my life changed, and then completely the whole melody of my moment went somewhere else. It was like I was, the chords changed in life suddenly midway. And not midway, but in the sense of just activity. So if we're not an object, if we're not a subject, and if all that the objects and subjects can conclude, the object concludes it as unknown stillness, the subject is concluded as an unknown movement. And the witness is the unknown. So ultimately, where is this left? This is left to, once you attain the unconditional, now there's the choice of working with the conditional, or you shift, the pilots shift. A different pilot comes in, But those are for beings who want to leave the dimension. That means there's this view in mysticism, the moment a person in the inner realms wants something, they get it. Let's say you say, I want to Mahasamadhi right now. The moment, the instant in your inner realms, the idea of Mahasamadhi happened, you have already Mahasamadhi. a different pilot has entered. You know, this doesn't mean a different soul. This doesn't mean the whole, you know, fear of, oh my God, you know, somebody bring, you know, holy water and a cross. You know? And I'll tell you, it's so fascinating. The labyrinth of psychology our species has walked into, and now, of the moment you realize language is not a simulation, it's as if you've stepped on top of the walls of this labyrinth and you're seeing the whole labyrinth. It doesn't mean you can go anywhere in the labyrinth. It doesn't mean suddenly all language is open to you, but it means you're starting to see the design of the realm, right? Because if the person doesn't have emotional attachment, everything is design. Literally living is attention moving in the space-time continuum. And the space-time continuum is shape. It's just pure geometry. That means what we call humanity, even there could be a deep philosophical argument that it's not human. There's no such thing. It's just geometry moving. It's an ocean of geometric movement where in a certain part of this ocean there has been enough of a consciousness to narrativize. So the idea a person has of themselves, it can suggest, okay, that's the better name. Instead of the idea of you prevent the potential of you, I should probably have titled it the idea of you suggest the potential of you. So that could be the second name, those who hear it know it. But anyways, the idea we have on ourselves comes from the idea we have on the world. If we have a different idea on the world, we could have a different sense of self. So if a person desires something out of place, they could be mutating their, changing their sense of self. And so it means sensitivity to no longer just the body's life, but also the mind's life. And upon remembrance of the unconditional, all you can do is create. Literally, if you were an immortal being right now, what would you do? If you were truly an infinite being to yourself right now, what would you do? You would endlessly create. Because that's the only thing you can do. You can destroy too, but then eventually you'll create. That means creation is how the void spends its time. It's like, look at the void creating this universe, you know, it's like, what a good void. Reality is honestly simulated. We are simulated. No one has ever spoken. People have just simulated sound. Simulated sound into meaning, you know. And this is a question I've had no one ever ask in these talks, but it's like, what would happen to freedom, the idea of freedom, if truth is beyond language? What would happen to the idea of the truth, freedom, all these, if it's beyond language? So let's say, this is just for metaphor's sake, that means don't take this as if, when I say 2D, 3D, 4D, don't take this as if it's actual, I mean 2D, 3D, 4D, they're just metaphors. I could say 5D, 6D, 7D, but imagine 2D, a 2D body, 3D mind, and 4D soul.
Okay, so now we finished that phase in history where we got to know our body, and strangely the body's evolution, I don't know if it's because of our clothing or if it's because of our food or our will, I don't know what it is, but the body has stopped evolving. I mean, not stopped, but slowed down. The mind has evolved into the recognition that it is the creator of meaning. That means all atheists don't realize the implication of when you say to someone, you are creating God. That is such an intense statement. That means the creator, it doesn't matter. That means, think of it this way. If you are creating God, that means both, it's storytelling all angles. Doesn't matter if you hold a religious banner or any other banner. It's all... It's like the world is as much of the creator of the mind as the mind is the creator of the world. And if the mind doesn't feel like it's the creator of the world, the person can't activate. Because then who's piloting? That means if I completely dismiss the sense of self, then the world is my sense of self. It goes to that backup system. And if I dismiss myself, let's say I go uber yogi, and like with hyper yogic concentration, let's say the person even realizes they're not the world. It's as if energy can't be created or destroyed, there's nothing to fear if you're an energetic being. That means if truly the soul is energy plus awareness, it's this awareness can't be created or destroyed, but changes from form to form endlessly. So as long as we even identify with an energetic being, you're going to stay in the wheel of karma, right? So that whole narrative doesn't serve, and this is where the advanced communicator context comes in, where what everybody is doing is communicating an inner film inside an outer film. And that inner film, if it leads to dominion over the outer realm, pretty much it's as if the earth is a canvas and all ideological systems are painting their own worldview on it. It's weird. Language is the cocoon in which 8 billion individual creatures emerge as a collective being. So the future is going to remember itself as God. The past believed in God. And the present is like, why all the noise? Anyways, guys, I said this was a short talk, and one more minute, it's gonna be an hour. So I guess I'll say something about the wallpaper. I felt this wallpaper is from the year 2070. I don't know why. I haven't looked at it even too deeply, but there was a feeling that, you see, the psychological freedom of the future generations is going to be so permitting, it's going to be so open, that all the things we are fighting about, they're not going to want to touch. That's how advanced the future is going to be.
And what does that mean? That means human beings, these endless genetical, not endless, but these genetical patterns that are endlessly echoing on. That means on one level, sure, human beings living on a planet. On another level, it's a gene endlessly copying itself and updating in accordance to how the environment sculpts it. Right? So it's literally like a pattern. It's weird. It's as if, imagine on the surface of on the surface of the planet there came a pattern, like some moving thing, and this moving thing was moving. It hit something, okay, and then it kept moving. Then I think it hit itself somehow. Before it could see itself, it hit itself. That means before we could say even the human being became, the subjective evolution began through some sort of mirrorizing experience. We can even say before that there was a self-hitting. There was a hand touching the other hand, or a limb hitting the other limb it's like simultaneous sensation. That means it's like a person touches, imagine you just like, you know, act out the movie E.T., like the last scene of the movie E.T., but with yourself, you're alone. There's no ETs, you know? So you put both of your fingers, you tap your index fingers together, and then which finger is feeling it? How can you tell which finger is feeling the sensation? A sort of ultimate paradox at the tip of our finger. If we say the world is more unknown than the known, it means language can be used to create anything, and in the future anybody's going to be like, anything I say is real. You know, a person could say, you know, the face in the cloud spoke to me. You know, and then you know you know, let's say a crowd of people come and they're like, okay, the face in the cloud spoke to you. Well, you're not wrong. I mean, there is a face in the cloud. Like, let's say the guy took a picture of the face in the cloud, right? And the mouth of the face of the cloud was moving. And then they're like, okay, the mouth of the face of the cloud is moving, but there was no voice. So how can we tell, you know? It's like all these talks are just me trying to tell the species, you're here once, there's something strange going on, you know, and don't let philosophy and art run into the battlefields of the future's freedom alone. We wake up from the great storytelling era, and from drops or characters in a story that could feel like they could evaporate, we, instead of evaporation, we merge. So this is the weird thing, that we were thinking, okay, Albert Einstein, what could, wow, look at what one mind did. Then in the future, philosophers are going to be like, wait a minute, what if all our minds were connected? This is going to the river phase. That means this is a strategy. What does a species do when they transcend language? They fly as a collective experience. And it's our choice. That means, imagine we become so conscious that you are actually your individual biological body, but also the experience somehow naturally. You are the planet's experience in everything. That means when aliens, imagine if in that timeline, if aliens came, this is hypothetical, if aliens came in the future to shake hands with human beings, and we would just be smiling at them, and then they'd be like, why are you guys smiling, human beings? right? And we'd be like, because you aliens haven't realized we are all the planet. You see, that's the power of love. That's love's greatest challenge, to somehow prepare the cultural programs of individual mechanized creatures into the winds of evolution, I've termed it. The winds of evolution means don't fear how your mind can move so much faster than your body that you will experience multiple bodies simultaneously. Think of it as that right now we are the future's memory. That means right now I am being the memory of the future. Now, what's gonna happen is I have access to the future's feeling on its memory. We all do. That means as much as we are being the future of our past, we are being the past of our future. And I will finalize this talk by saying the era of the multidimensional human being has begun. The era of advanced communication, advanced communicators. That's all that is left. The communication has to advance. Either physical stuff changes or non-physical stuff, and communication is only, non-physical strategy, That means technically communication is like speech is magic, isn't it? It's like out of nowhere, sound emerged. It's like instead of a wild Pokemon, a wild philosophical idea emerged. The idea of you can prevent the potential of you if you think you are the idea of you. If you are, believe it or not, just simple, the potential, the world does the hard work. When I mean the world does the hard work, I mean intuition. And I don't know if in the future philosophers will care about designating roles to one's own psyche. As if imagine, fragmented psychology, that's another episode. I'm going to speak about that, but we started from the void, been there, done that. We were singular, we found universal singular angle, been there, done that. We found the endless duality of chaos and order, we found that dimension, been there, done that. The only thing that is left is the infinite. That's the only thing we have no clue about. Net language is dual. More than ever, the world needs philosophers on the idea of infinity now. Everybody should write an essay. Like, what are teachers doing in schools? Like, when is the era of militant philosophy gonna happen? I'm joking. Philosophers can never be militant because, it's hard to decide. But anyways, guys, thanks for listening. And for this episode especially, entertain the question. It's just could the idea of you suggest the potential of you? And if the idea of you is weak, so the potential of you is going to be weak. If you right now feel you're your worst self, you're going to have the potential of your worst self. If you think you're your greatest self right now, you're going to have the potential of the greatest self. That mind has entertained that narrative angle, So you're as weak as you are, and you're as strong as you are. And how you are suggests how the ideas mean to you. And I feel there will come in the future, maybe I don't know, like 200 years from now, there will come mystics that they are so divine that they don't need to be divine. They have attained a level of divinity that its non-divinity is the edge of. It's like you can't, it's beyond divinity, you know. There's I gotta share this story before I end. Actually, there was this shoemaker. This is a story from a Sufi story, and also a story that incorporates the idea of the alchemist. So there's this alchemist, the Sufi alchemist, who's gone into this shoemaker, to this shoemaker's place, and he's given his shoes, and he's like this guy in his 30s, and he has a book, and he's reading a book there, and he has like this elixir, this, as legend has it, the elixir of the alchemist. And some people called it, I think, the philosopher's stone. Maybe it got, like, you know, mutated into that. But or that could be a separate thing. But anyways, the alchemist had an elixir that would change lead to gold. And so how the story goes is that this shoemaker is an extremely old man, and his hand is shaking every time he's hitting the hammer. And this guy's like this intelligent 30-year-old alchemist, and he's like, oh my god, this guy's hurting himself. But he doesn't say anything because you respected your elders, so you respected also how they were being to themselves. Excuse me. So what happens? The shoemaker finishes creating the shoe and puts the hammer aside, and for a moment goes to the, I don't know, get something or wash his hands or something. And this alchemist is like, let me surprise this old man, he doesn't have any sons like helping him in his business, like, I'll do this, And so he pours his elixir on the hammer and makes the hammer, this metal hammer, completely into gold. And he waits, and he sits there and he waits. And what happens is that the old man comes and he looks at him, and he looks at the guy, and he says, and the alchemist is expecting him to be like, oh my god, well, you're what a blessed young man, but instead the old man gets angry, and he says, who told you to change this? Turn it back. Who told you to make this into gold? And the alchemist suddenly gets up, he's like, old man, I apologize, but it's like, this is gold, you can sell it, you don't have to work and break your hands here, I'm being brutally honest with you, but listen to me, And the old man says, no, turn it back. Who told you to change this into gold? As if he's telling him, who told you to touch the karma of the moment? Now look at what happens. The alchemist looks at him and says, sorry, my technology or the sciences, I don't know, like the alchemical sciences only allows to change it from bad to transform it into gold, and that's like even a metaphor for that ends when somebody wants to their nature wants to change, your nature wants to liberate, you got to completely transform. Right, anyways. So the old man says, change it back, and the alchemist says, I can't. And the old man, there's an awkward silence, and he's like, don't touch moments again. And he touches the hammer, and it turns back into what it was. It reverses. And this alchemist sits there, instantly just face-palming himself, realizing that there is a superior game to the realm that transcends how we measure in a certain state of mind, the ultimatum of everything. And you know what? I'm going to change this from prevent to suggest, guys. I'm going to put the idea of you suggest the potential of you. Because that way, if it's a good idea, it's preventing your potential. If it's a bad idea, it's preventing your potential. If it's a good idea, it's
So the talk transformed by the end of it, for those of the title changed. Yeah. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Namaste.